build to achieve. It makes them feel valued, it makes them feel part of something, it makes them feel that their work is useful. They can see the fruits of their labour in front of them. It comes back to them and to their neighbours 100-fold. Imagine never having to worry about paying the rent, never having to worry about healthcare, education provision for your children, university fees. Imagine never having to worry about whether or not you'll still have a job tomorrow. And never having to worry about whether there's going to be food on your table or your children's table today or tomorrow. You know, Cuba's achievements in the fields of health and education are relatively widely known now. But it's not so well understood that it was the Soviet Union that pioneered all of that. It was the Soviet Union that was the first to provide these kind of things, and that at a time, not only when they had just fought a very debilitating first a revolution, then a civil war, war of intervention, but when the rest of the world was going through the Great Depression, the mirror of the crisis we're having now. You know, the rest of the world was plunged into total poverty. The Soviet Union was going from strength to strength. They were providing facilities, first-class, world-class facilities for ordinary working-class people of the kind that before then had only ever been dreamed about. You know, like the Soviet Union before it, if you go to the DPRK today, something that hits people when they go there, and I'm sorry to say I never have yet, but something that is always related to me when I talk to people who have been, no advertisements in the streets. Can you imagine a life free from that bombardment of rubbish? You know, you don't appreciate how much it oppresses you and weighs down on your mentality all the time in your face. You have to learn not to look around you, learn to kind of walk around in your own little bubble to keep it out. You know, blaring out at you. Now you're not even free from it in a petrol station forecourt, in the Sainsbury's. They're advertising at you, non-stop, all the time. To live in a place where not only do you not have that, but you have people's art in the streets. You know, celebrations, statues and posters, artwork celebrating the achievements of you and your fellow people. Ordinary people's buildings made beautiful, turned into palaces. They have children's palaces in Korea. You know, the Soviet Union did just that sort of thing. Constructed the most incredible artistic buildings where ordinary people were every day, like the underground system in Moscow. You know? Places where ordinary people go, made beautiful, to uplift them, to make them feel respected, valued, to make them care about their society and feel that they in turn are cared about. Comrade Brar's already talked about how the Soviet Union provided for mothers and children. It's something you can't underestimate the impact of. And so far in advance of the rest of the world. You know, it's the only place where they really, or the first place they really showed that liberation of women is about practical things. It's about not just allowing women to take part in jobs, but freeing them to do so. Providing the best possible childcare, where you feel happy to leave your children. Providing huge amounts of paid maternity leave, both before and after the baby's born, so that they're optimum health for the mother and the baby. You know, moving women, I was reading recently, you know, they would, as soon as they knew a woman was pregnant, they'd move her into, you know, easier physical work if she was in something that was quite taxing. You know, the day the baby and the mother came home from the hospital, who came to see them? Not just a nurse, obstetrician, in the house. They really, really cared about the health of women, of children. They set up creches, laundries, kindergartens, public dining rooms, all the services that Comrade Karl talked about before, to free women and allow them to really take their place in society, and to give children an equal start in life. You know, there was recently a report published by the World Health Organization that talked about health inequality in the world. And the conclusion that they came to, well, pretty much the conclusion between the lines was, we need socialism. They said, people need jobs, people need decent housing, people need access to culture. And they talked about illness prevention, which of course was the core principal tenet of the Soviet medical system. And they talked about children needing an equal start from the beginning. They talked about the importance of preschool education. They talked about the importance of involving the whole community in that type of preschool education, that it's not just a question of sending them off to a university, to a kindergarten for a couple of hours and bringing them back again. That it's really a whole community needs to take part in that. But you need to have a community to do something like that. You know, people need to be organised as a community in order to implement those kind of programs. There's only socialist countries in the world today that do that. It's only in Cuba, it's only in the DPRK where you see these kind of programs in action. And it was in the Soviet Union that you saw them first. Can you imagine living in a world where education throughout life was the norm, where opportunities to develop your potential are provided as a matter of course to everyone at no cost, with no penalty to your family if you decide to take them up, to have a change of career. You don't have to worry that your children are going to eat if you need to retrain. You know, we live in a society that criminally squanders and suppresses the creative and productive potential of the vast masses of humanity. Even the best off workers often feel isolated and insecure, and the vast majority are only ever 1 or 2 pay packets away from destitution. None of the main contradictions of imperialism can be solved without proletarian revolution. We will never have job or housing security or secure pensions as long as imperialism exists. Our job as socialists under capitalism is to use the daily and hourly crises of imperialism to expose the system and explain to workers that as long as this system continues, the rich will get richer, the poor will get poorer, the crises will get deeper, the wars will become bigger and bloodier. October showed us we have nothing to lose and everything to gain from the socialist revolution, which will free us all from poverty and insecurity. Proved that work under socialism is transformed from meaningless drudgery into a vehicle for unlocking the potential and creativity of the working class. And it was October that proved that while imperialism continues to oppress and plunder and drench the world in blood, there is only one thing that can usefully be done with your life, with my life, with anybody's life, and that's to join the fight against imperialism and join the fight for more Octobers.
Very much, Joti, but you were quite wrong in saying that I've spoken your speech earlier. It's quite different. To the extent there is some repetition, then I think it's perfectly all right. As the old Latin saying goes, repetition is the key to learning. And you have talked of the power of advertisements. We must advertise our ideology. The more often we speak about it, the better. I hope each speaker will be able to repeat some of the things because they are essential. We are in a minority and will never become a majority unless and until we actually continue to insist on speaking the truth, whatever the cost. We've somehow been thrown back in the imperialist centers to being in similar position to that of the early Christians. You know, you're hounded from place to place, but you're nevertheless able to convey what they used to call the Lord's message. In our case, it is the message of the working class. We are the majority. Why are we such fools that we accept the propaganda of the tiny minority that actually keeps us in subjugation? We shall not accept that as being the fate of humanity. Thank you very much once again, Joti.